I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, in today's paper, I saw the headline here that BC shuts the door on secondary suite incentive program over uncertain financial times. Well, yeah, I guess this is the trade war that David Eby's got us involved in with the United States. So here, I keep telling you guys, the dominoes are going to keep falling here. So, you know, these incentive programs, I remember when this came out last year, the NDP rolls these out all the time, and a lot of people will ask me to comment on some of these, and I almost never do. One of the reasons I never do is because they're useless. They're just a way to make it look like to the general public that they're doing something about affordability. This thing was dead on arrival, pretty much. You know, the program, in case you guys don't know, it was a $40,000 forgivable loan for a homeowner in a single detached home to install a rental suite, a self-contained rental suite, which, you know, could easily run several $100,000, who knows, 300. It would depend on, you know, the house and what has to be done. Remember, when you're putting in a legal suite, there's all kinds of things in there. You know, firewall protections, you got to put in another electrical panel, sprinklers usually. So, you know, they're not cheap to put in. But the other thing I've talked about, you know, the days of, yes, buying a house with a mortgage helper is still desirable for some buyers, for sure. You know, especially on the east side, but especially out in the suburbs, Richmond, Burnaby, Coquitlam. I just sold a house out in Pitt Meadows that had, you know, a nice self-contained mortgage helper. But I've told you guys that, you know, it's becoming less and less desirable as the prices of these homes go up. Because back 15 or 20 years ago, you know, I was selling detached homes on the east side to baggage handlers that were working for Air Canada. And for sure, to make the numbers work, they needed to have maybe an authorized and maybe an unauthorized mortgage helper downstairs to make the numbers work. But, you know, I've talked about stories about, for instance, on the west side of Vancouver, you know, when I'm selling a house in Kerrisdale, let's say, you know, these might be an old kind of craftsman house that's 60, 70 years old, 2,400 square feet, that might have a self-contained, an older suite with low ceiling heights. You know, these people are buying these homes for $3 million now, not 800 grand. And so they're multi-millionaires that are buying these homes. Pretty much everyone I've sold on the west side in the last 4 or 5 years. The new buyer is not interested in the least of having a suite downstairs. They've all said the same thing, that they're going to remove the suite, take over the downstairs, turn it into a child's bedroom, or turn it into a games room or a media room or whatever else. So that's a trend that is continuing now. Why would a guy who's dropping $3 million on an older home with a family of 4 or 5 be interested in a stranger renting a suite from him for $2,000 a month? He doesn't care about that money. It's not going to make any difference. And now, even on the east side, I'm noticing more and more as you start getting into the $2 million, $2.5, $3 million now for east side homes. These are multimillionaires are buying these that aren't as interested. Some are, don't get me wrong, but they aren't as interested in these suites. So it would be the same thing here. An older home that doesn't have a suite, they'll give you a loan here to put in a suite. I don't know. I just don't see it. Most of these homeowners, at least in Vancouver, they're pretty well heeled. Are they really going to want a stranger living under their roof to make an extra $2,400 a month? And they're going to have to spend $250,000 or $300,000 to build the suite. So it's going to take them 10 years just to get the money back from it. So it doesn't surprise me they scrapped this. They're blaming it on uncertain financial times. Yeah, again, this is the old government isn't the answer to your problem. Government is the problem. The uncertain financial times are because of David Eby, guys. So again, they try and solve problems that they create. The other quick thing I want to tell you about, I also saw in the news here about this real estate investment fund. It was something called ADDY, A-D-D-Y. So it looks like they've been fined by the BC Securities Commission for misconduct. They weren't even registered. So I remember this came across the news, and I think this came across one of my daily emails, and there's a bunch of these. So these are these investment trusts of some sort that for as little as $1 per share, you can invest in this fund, and they will go out and buy I guess everything from detached homes, rental properties, condos, and you pool your money into this fund and then you share in the profits and the revenues. And guys, I wouldn't touch this stuff with a 10-foot pole. I mean, if you want to become an investor, do it the right way. Do it the way I recommend in my book, the way that I've done it. Save your money, get the 20% down, buy yourself a nice older concrete or an older wood frame in the West End for $575K, put a tenant in it, and hang on to it. You are in the driver's seat. You control everything. You're the one that puts the tenant in. You collect the rent. You're the one that's paying the taxes. It's 100% transparent. These things are completely opaque. And I'll be honest, I don't know anything about this Addy, other than I remember I saw it touted here a couple of years ago. But there's been a whole bunch of them. I see them all the time. I think those two twin brothers that run that renovation show, didn't they have some sort of a fund that I saw they were the front men for? Similar thing where you can buy shares for as little as $1. So you can invest $10 and buy 10 shares, and it'll go into this pool, and you'll now be a land baron of some sort. You're going to be a landlord now. Don't fall for it, guys. Do it the right way. I can't imagine, well, I can, because geez, here we are. These guys, this Addy was not even licensed, for God's sake. So I can imagine what the accounting was like in this. You know full well that these things have probably got incredibly high fees attached to them. They'll probably, administration charges is probably what they'll call them. So for every dollar they take in, I'm sure there's a myriad of fees. I'd like to know, maybe if anyone knows anything about it, comment. What was your returns on this? But I see these horror stories all the time about people that invest into these kind of real estate trusts of some sort. For as little as a couple $100 they can invest. They seldom work out, in my experience. I don't think I've ever seen one where I've ever heard that it's a good deal and they've made a good return. But maybe you guys can comment on it. But anyways, they've been fined, misconduct, weren't even licensed in BC to be selling these investment units in this. So it is what it is. Be careful. If you guys want to invest in real estate, do it the right way. Buy my book. I'll show you how to do it. Hire a good realtor. Buy a good simple one bed. Or if you've got bigger plans, you could buy a Vancouver special with 3 different suites in there, or 3 different tenants. But now you own it. You control it. That's always what you want to be. Rule number 1. I remember growing up, one of my mentors used to tell me, rule number 1 when it comes to investing and or just business in general, always hang on to the money. Remember that. Always be in control. I want to know with my investments exactly what I'm invested in. I don't want to be paying these opaque fees for all kinds of stuff. Kind of reminds me, I've talked a little bit about those hotel style stratas that you can buy. There's some of them in down Vancouver. There's some of them in Richmond. Stay away, guys. Stay away. I've sold a few over the years. Do not buy these. You should see the accounting they give you every year on these, on where the money goes and how much they distribute out. Not good. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. See you next week.